In June 2022, I developed the perfect mastering compressor technique, so my low end would stay clean and open. Now, I developed it when I noticed attack and release times that moved faster than the cycle of the lowest fundamental frequency would change the waveform shape mid-cycle, and that would introduce harmonics. That's pretty abstract, but it's also common knowledge that fast attack and release times introduce some distortions, some harmonics. So I ended up doing some research into the ballistics of compressors, and I came up with the following formula. But can you spot the error?
The attack and release parameters of standard compressors are logarithmic in their action, and most notably follow the charge and discharge times of electronic capacitor, which have a logarithmic value base of 2.718, which means for attack and release times, the attack or the charge time of one time constant is 1 minus 1 over E, or 6.32, which means your attack time will only reach 63.2% of the gain reduction value at one revolution of the time constant, and it'll take 4 to 5 times the time constant to reach its maximum gain reduction. Likewise, with release time or the discharge time, it's 1 over E, which is 0.368. Now, your release time will only release back to 36.8% of the gain at one time constant, and it will take 4 to 5 time constants to arrive back at unity gain. That said, the fastest velocity at which the gain reduction circuit moves is during that first time constant dictated by the logarithmic base value of the charge and discharge time. The subsequent 4 to 5 times extra it takes to reach its maximum gain reduction or release completely to 0 is too inconsequential to take into consideration for how we can calculate attack and release times to minimize harmonic distortion. Where n equals the lowest fundamental frequency, and I'll show you how I determine that, 1 over n times 10 divided by 2. Now, an example for a song with a low fundamental in the kick at 50 Hz, 1 over n times 10 over 2. 1 over 50 times 10 over 2 equals 0.1, or represents 100 milliseconds. This would mean that I'd dial my attack and release to 100 milliseconds each, totaling 200 milliseconds in total, which equals one full revolution of 50 Hz. Now, I'm going to show you this plotted in Plugin Doctor against some alternate settings, as well as show you in practice how this sounds dialing it into a mix in comparison to a default setting in the plugin I use, and we can see how the harmonics change in there.
Did you pick up the error? Now, a lot of people picked it up in the comments, and it was that I was multiplying the cycle by a factor of 10. Now, don't ask why I put this in my formula. This was a silly conversion error. I was honestly just trying to get the length of one cycle. I don't know why I multiplied it by a factor of 10. It was a human error, but it worked. Every time I'd use this formula, the harmonics from the attack and release time when I set it like this were less than or were greater than 60 decibels below the original signal, which meant I wasn't getting any harmonic distortions from the low end changing shape, and it was a great starting point for manipulating my compression times. And I still use that technique today. But I want to explain to you why this error was a happy accident, and step by step, how I now use this technique for dialing in compression. So first, my research was correct. The fastest velocity of a compressor is during that first time constant. But even though I set it, I miss out on a key point of information in my calculation. It takes roughly 5 time constants to reach maximum gain reduction, and that is both for charge and discharge times. It takes roughly 5 time constants to reach maximum gain reduction and return to unity. So when I incorrectly converted my frequency by multiplying by a factor of 10, I was unknowingly accommodating for these time constants to charge and discharge fully. So I was wrong when I converted frequency to time in my formula, but because I made this error, it was actually a happy error to make because it accommodates for the full charge and discharge time of the attack and release. It's been 18 months since I've developed these settings and I'm still using them. So I want to show you now how I set it up and apply them and how they actually sound on a master. So we've got Warden's, the waiting sign. We're going to play it through and I'm going to tell you guys what I'm listening for and what I'm hoping to achieve by dialing in this compressor. So listening to it, everything sounds really together, especially the body of the guitars. And I'm hoping by dialing in some compression, I'm not aiming to glue everything like sometimes I would, where everything sort of gets a little bit of a ceiling to it and it feels like everything is in the same space. I sort of want to create a little bit more separation, or punch maybe is the most simplest term for this mix. And that's because the body of the guitars are quite close to where the drums are, and I feel like it might take away a bit of the bite of the drums the way it's sitting. So if we add a bit of compression where it sort of just triggers but comes in and then softens those guitar bodies after each drum hit, the drum snaps will come out a bit. Slow attack, fast release typically is what you do, but that also introduces some distortions. So what we're going to do is I'll show you how I dial it in using these calculations. So I bring it over to iZotope RX Audio Editor, and I want to know what the lowest fundamental frequency cycle is. So we go zoom in, and that would be at 50 Hertz. 49 Hertz is exactly where that kick drum low fundamental sits. So what I want to do is I've got these all preset out, these frequencies, and 50 Hertz is where I'm at. So that's 100 attack, 100 release. That accommodates, now I know, for the time constants. And what we're going to do is we're going to dial this in, and then after we get the threshold moving, so it's taking about 1 to 2 decibels of gain reduction, we're going to start listening to the delta and then manipulate the crest factor to do what I've described. Focus on pushing the guitars a little bit into the back and making those transients pop a bit. So let's do that. That's in a good pocket. It's just taking just enough at a 2-to-1 ratio. Now we'll listen to the delta, and my aim is to manipulate this peak crest. So if I go over here, it's fully peak. It's not considering any of the RMS values, and it's just reacting to peak information. And over here, it's purely RMS and average. Now, in my experience, for what I'm trying to achieve, I'm going to be heading a little bit closer towards the RMS side to allow it to smoothly compress in between. But let's dial this in now. Okay, let's just level match that. All right, level match. Let's have a listen before and after. Come on, those drums completely smack out of the speaker in a really cool way. I'm actually pretty happy with that. So I really want you guys to understand that when I'm using this setting, it's not necessarily just a calculation I'm plugging in and then going set and forget. Sometimes we need to tweak it. We have to have intention behind why we're using a compressor. Now, this typically is always much slower, much on the attack and release than you'd usually use pretty much ever. But in terms of manipulating with the peak crest And using these settings, I can get very clean compression that doesn't shift the tone of the mix, but allows me to manipulate the dynamics directly in mastering, which I think is a really common goal when I'm mastering, is how can we listen to this? Do we appreciate the dynamics? Can we manipulate it? How do we manipulate it? And how do we do that without stepping on the foot of the mixing engineer? So anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video, and until next time, take care.